So we finished out these couple of charts we went through where we looked at a couple different ways of slicing the organization down. And we talk about this in terms of hands on the elephant. There's an old parable about blind men walking down a road and encountering an elephant, and any one of them couldn't describe a full elephant, and if they only had their own hand, one hand on the elephant, they might think it's a tree trunk or a snake or something like that. But you took all five of them together, they could understand it's an elephant. So these are different ways of breaking down the elephant into different ways of thinking about the organization. And I want you to think about that. These are all things that you should get good at in the organization. But now let's talk about some of the people, because the people ends up being the hardest part of this. And it's one of the things that gets us stuck as we're trying to climb this mountain. In survival stage, what we see mostly, this doesn't apply everywhere, but this is what we see most of the time, is that some kind of founder is a subject matter expert at something. Um, they're really good at that thing. And they said, hey, I'm going to build a business around that thing. And they find some people, more than likely some generalists, maybe one or two of them are also specialists in some areas, but most of what they're building around themselves is generalists, people that can kind of like fill in the gaps for themselves, or can just do what that founder asks for a period of time, right? Because you have to be very nimble. You have to be willing to dodge and dart and dance all the time. And when you're in survival stage, to get to the next stage, your number one job when you're in survival stage is to get sustainable as fast as possible. And sustainable, now I've got that SME founder still, and that now I'm probably going to bring in some specialists. If I'm going to continue to rise through this, is because I realized, hey, you know what? I need someone actually who's really good at marketing, not just my cousin Philip, who's learned how to use Photoshop. I need someone that's actually good at this and can go do some things. I need someone who's actually good at customer service. Whatever it is for you, you start to bring on some specialist managers. And that's when we typically start to see a leadership team form. And when I work with teams, almost always there's varying degrees of capabilities in leadership, management, and mentoring on that leadership team. And probably varying degrees of desire to be a great leader or manager in a business around that. But you need to have a couple of people. And if you're going to be a successful founder, it's because you've chosen the right disciplines to put specialists in at those early stages. But still, you got mostly a generalist staff. That's really what we mostly see. And this might carry you through to that 25, almost maybe to 50 people, where you've got this kind of a handful of specialists. But hopefully, if you're a really thoughtful leader, what you're trying to do is find more and more of those specialists to lay around. Because when we get to scalable, this is one of the big changes that happens. That founder needs to become a leader, needs to become a CEO, needs to become someone who understands their limitations, understands to let go of the SME capabilities they had before, and needs to be good at organizing, coordinating, and running the business and building the business. And you've got hopefully almost all specialist managers in all those portions of the business, in marketing and sales, in whatever your operations might be, in technology and HR, whatever the important parts of your business are. You should have people who are really good at those things, and hopefully people that also want to be leaders, by the way, which we'll talk about here in a second. So you got specialist managers and some specialists that even work for them. So you want to have some people that they're reporting up to them that are really good at a very specific part of the business. If you think about a company of 50 people, it's next to impossible for all 50 people to understand everything that's going on in the business. So you want people that can kind of focus in on that part of the business that they're really good at, and are kind of self-aware enough to know what they need to know from everybody else to do a good job of their thing. And that's what we need to develop inside the organization from a culture perspective, is that separation of, do I need to know everything that's going on? Because if your generalist staff in your survival mode probably starts to feel really uncomfortable as they know less and less about what's going on. But they have to start letting that go, because there's no way to keep everybody 100% apprised of everything going on. And specialists tend to be better and better at saying, hey, as long as I know these things, I can figure out what has to happen here. And as long as it looks and feels and smells and tastes like you're hiring great people to do other things, and we can make sure we're developing trust between us, then I feel okay. And that's part of being a great leader. Being a great CEO is building trust in the organization. So I, as a specialist, can focus on what I'm focusing on, and I trust that everyone else is doing the same thing. And then get to that success stage. If you got to have in place, if you're really going to be in that success stage, you're going to survive what tends to happen in that space where you've got new people coming at you, new competition trying to take away your employees and take away your customers, is because you've got leaders that are specialists in leadership. They might have a domain that they work in, like a CTO or a CFO, but they're also good at leading teams. They got both those things. They know how to find their staff and train their staff and mature their staff. So they're great at what they do. And all your core managers, so that means like your leadership team and what's below that, should all be really great at their job. They'll all be specialists and really good at having people report to them, because that is how you're going to continue to grow is by delegation. And everyone starts to roll up. And by this point, in success stage, you probably don't have too many generalists. Generalists maybe go in places where you're going to have experimenting with things like, hey, I'm going to try some entrepreneurship. I'm going to try to go into this new market, or I'm going to try this new product. And that's one of the reasons that so many businesses struggle with that, because when you get big enough and you're all specialists, it's hard to take those specialists and put them back in entrepreneur mode, which requires being a generalist. So being conscious of that is an important part of success and stewardship. Listen, your leaders are all superlative leaders, and you're amazing cultivators of talent. So to get up to that stage, you've got to be slowly developing the ability to be an employer of choice, to have career paths for everybody in the organization, and being about that more than about putting books in boxes or whatever made you good at the very beginning of this journey is what differentiates a leader that can survive that stage and ones that don't. And so knowing what you want out of this is part of the journey, part of how we apply this. Where do I really want to land in this? And do I want to take on that next level of challenge? Because you don't have to. There's other ways of handling it. People have been very successful, just knowing where they belong, and just that self-awareness is valuable. And one last thing here, bonus. So Daniel Pink, great writer and lecturer on these topics, but he's got one of the great books on motivation. I'll put a link to it. You can, but there's a video that YouTube that walks through this. But he's a very similar approach to thinking about the levels of and the way to think about motivation inside your organization as you rise up through these 5 stages. And he has 7, so it kind of goes more with Elliot Jacques approach to things. There was a 7-layer model with Maslow as well, but let's just walk through these really quickly. In the survival stage, you want everyone that can really respond to acting out of necessity, right? Hey, it's okay. We're all okay with the fact that we're in survival stage. If you got people that are particularly nervous about that, they're not going to be great fits for the organization. They're going to their level of anxiety is going to be too high. So finding people that are kind of okay and maybe exhilarated by being in survival mode is a good idea. I'm an ENTJ, and NTs are really good at handling that and at saying, okay, how do we make it better? We find that NTs are overrepresented in early stage companies. Just a tip. And then when we get to the sustained place, then our rewards, tend to be something like, hey, can we be clear on rewards when we accomplish things? And this is where we usually start to put in things like incentive pay and if-then types of rewards. And this is not a great mature reward system, by the way. This is something that we can do and manage in that time, and the people that come along with those times tend to be ones that respond well to that. But those don't have a lot of staying power. That type of reward system doesn't really last. To give someone a bump in pay or to give someone a big check only lasts for a very short period of time. It doesn't actually orient them for the long haul. And that's what a lot of the Elliot Jacques work was all about. Like, what's the right way of incenting people so that they stay focused on what's most important? And at scalable stages, where we see that 2 of these levels start to come in, we want approval, so which becomes more and more important. That in our culture, we are great at validating people and creating opportunities for people to try things and rewarding them for whether they won or lost, as long as they learned. And achievement, acting to win, reach goals. So we have to be very good at being able to set goals and achieve goals to make that scalable stage really work. That is hey, when we really see the lights come on with everybody about the value of an operating system, it's like, hey, I know what I'm doing today is part of getting this much longer term goal. I can feel it. I get approval for it. it. I get recognized for it. I can feel the achievement. Those are great people to have around because they're going to help you when the next stage as well. When at that success stage is where we're really trying to get to mastery, and everyone here is here to master what they're good at. We love that stage. We talk about it too in almost all the options. We talk about, hey, this is a path towards mastery. So we're trying to get to. I'm get better and better at this. And in the earlier stages, there's always this notion of, hey, I got paid on that. I must be great at it. No, you haven't mastered it. Well, you just did what we asked you to do, and we appreciate that. But you wanted to master at it. But so at the success stage, we want to make sure we've got people, mostly people that are great at that. And so that at level 4 achievement, that's probably like really straddles success and scalable. Then ultimately we want to get to a place where people feel like purpose is the reason they're acting. They're doing it because more and more people are doing it because they really wanted us achieve the things we want to achieve. It gets harder, by the way, to maintain that kind of payback system. And ultimately it's about autonomy. Hey, does everyone feel like they're acting on their own best interest and everyone else's best interest because they're trying to achieve this ultimate goal? All right. So that's my short-ish lecture on the inevitable stages of growth. We apply those in every one of the classes that we teach, every one of the sessions that I give. I go back to this and say, where are we and how do we want to apply this tool or this discipline or this approach to the business? Where, and let's be really clear and aligned in what has to come next. So that's what that's what we want you to take away from this. Always be thinking about where are we, what needs to change for us to get to that next place. Thanks, everybody.